Good evening. The Nixon presidency is virtually being overtaken by events tonight. One of Mr. Nixon's Senate leaders, Griffin of Michigan, and his chief House Judiciary Committee defender, Wiggins of California, both asked for his resignation. The president himself admitted he has lost his impeachment fight in the House, that he has not always given the public the straight story on Watergate, and that he withheld from his lawyers and the House committee certain damaging information. Dan Rather reports.
The president made public 3 transcripts of meetings with his former chief aide, H.R. Bob Haldeman, all June 23, 1972. This was 6 days after the Watergate break-in, 3 days after an earlier discussion of Watergate with Haldeman, the tape of which has been mysteriously erased, and 1 week before John Mitchell was dismissed as presidential campaign manager. This is the first time that contents of these June 23, 1972 tape recordings have been made known outside of the White House. With the new transcripts, the president issued a written statement of his own. In it, he acknowledges that what the transcripts say is, as Mr. Nixon puts it, at variance with what he told the American people on other occasions. In this regard, the president acknowledges that he has known this since last May. Thus, he acknowledges that he has known for 3 months what his own lawyers, his defenders in Congress, and the American people didn't know. Mr. Nixon apologizes for this, expresses deep regret that it happened, says he did not intend for it to happen. Whether this new revised presidential statement becomes the so-called smoking pistol, proving clear-cut guilt, or merely, as the president put it today, a potential problem, Mr. Nixon, in effect, leaves to the United States Senate to decide. For in his new statement, the president concedes that he will be impeached, probably by the House of Representatives, and tried by the Senate. Correspondent Fred Graham will have precise examples of the differences between what the president said before and what the new transcripts show later in this broadcast. In his personal statement accompanying the new transcripts today, the president says, quote, "I recognize that this additional material I am now furnishing may further damage my case, especially because attention will be drawn separately to it rather than to the evidence in its entirety." The president ends his written statement by saying, again, direct quote, "I am firmly convinced that the record in its entirety does not justify the extreme step of impeachment and removal of the president. I trust that as the constitutional process goes forward, this perspective will prevail." End of quotation. CBS News was told tonight by 2 sources who declined to be identified that Chief of White House Staff Alexander Haig has been talking directly with Mississippi's Senator James Eastland, and that Eastland had told Haig that prospects for the president's case in the Senate just now do not look good. The White House indicated that this story was not true in its entirety. Eastland, contacted by CBS News, said, "I never told Haig anything approaching that." Dan Rather, CBS News, the White House.
The June 23, 1972 White House conversation is only one of many ordered released by the Supreme Court, but it is a crucial one, for it occurred so soon after the Watergate break-in. Fred Graham reports now on the so-called presidential variances acknowledged today.
President Nixon's basic defense on Watergate was first laid out in detail in a long statement he issued on May 22, 1973. In that statement, the president said this about his order that the FBI go slow in investigating the Mexican laundering of money found on the Watergate burglars. "I was advised that there was a possibility of CIA involvement in some way. It was certainly not my intent nor my wish that the investigation of the Watergate break-in or of related acts be impeded in any way." In the transcript released today, H.R. Haldeman tells President Nixon just 6 days after Watergate, Haldeman, "Now, on the investigation, you know the Democratic break-in thing. We're back in the problem area because the FBI is not under control. The way to handle this now is for us to have Walters call Pat Gray and just say, 'Stay the hell out of this.'" Then Haldeman explained that the problem was that the FBI was tracing some of the money back to the committee to re-elect the president and its chairman, Maurice Stans. Mr. Nixon, "It isn't from the committee, though, from Stans, Haldeman." "Yeah, it is. Directly traceable." Then last April 29th, when Mr. Nixon announced his decision to make public the edited White House transcripts, he said the following.
"In these folders that you see over here on my left are more than 1,200 pages of transcripts of private conversations I participated in between September 15, 1972 and April 27 of 1973. with my principal aides and associates with regard to Watergate. As far as what the President personally knew and did with regard to Watergate, and the cover-up is concerned, these materials, together with those already made available, will tell it all.
Today, the president admitted that this was untrue. He said he was speaking from memory, which was mistaken, and that as a result, quote, those arguing my case, as well as those passing judgment on the case, did so with information that was incomplete and in some respects erroneous. This was a serious act of omission for which I take full responsibility and which I deeply regret. President Nixon's statement today said that he has no way at this time of being certain that other mistakes in his prior statement will not subsequently come to light. But he said he has no reason to believe that this will happen. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.